Hello. Um, this is step one of your bond portfolio project. What you're going to need to do is select your bonds. In order to get to the bond site to evaluate the bonds, you're just going to Google or Bing FINRA bonds. Go to the bond site and then select on the bond data center. You're going to click on corporate bonds because that's what you're interested in, and then you need one bond from each one of your stocks. If a stock has no bonds out there, you're allowed to select an extra bond, but you need at least 10 bonds for your analysis. In other words, you can select an extra bond from another one of your stocks. So I'm going to start off here with IBM. Go ahead and click on search. So these represent all the bonds that IBM has outstanding. What you're looking for is bonds with a high yield to maturity and a maturity date that is beyond our due date. And our due date is 8.5 years after November 18th of this year. So our maturity is 8.5 years away from November 18th, and our duration that we're looking for is going to be a duration of 8.5 years. So as I'm looking at these bonds, we have this one right here, IBM HB, that has a yield of 3.556. It matures on 2028. We have this bond right here, GY, that's going to mature on 2096, way far away. And this bond LD that's going to mature on 2039. So you're kind of looking through here. First bond I wanted to check out was IBM.KY. Company IBM, coupon is 8%. Let's just go take a quick look at it. So I'm looking for IBM KY. It's here. Here we go, IBM KY. Matures on 2038, so that's after the target date. Has a yield right now of 5.27, which is a lot better than any other ones I have out here. What we need to do next is check to see when the last time it traded was. So if I just click on IBM.KY, you'll see right here that the last time it traded was 11/15 of 2013. So that's over a year ago, or almost a year ago, which means that this price is stale. And therefore it's something that you don't want to do. I went ahead and did it here. The coupon rate is 8%. I'm getting that from right here, coupon rate of 8%. Or if I go back, all the bond details are there. Here's my KY bond, 8%. The last price traded is just move the decimal point over 1. So $1,419.65, yield to maturity of 5.027. I plug in the numbers. Here's my coupon rate. I'm just typing that in. The face value is always going to be 1,000. Yield maturity is this one. The last price traded. Just type that in. The date that it was traded is required. The maturity date of the bond. So the maturity date of the bond is just coming from right here. My KY bond matures in 10/15 of 2038. Number of periods, this is a simple equation. We're going to consider the start date, again, is 11/18/2014, and we're going to take the maturity date minus the start date divided by 365 times 2, and that's going to give us the number of periods until the bond can mature. We're going to have a little if statement here. If this number is greater than the NPER, this is 8.5 years in the future, 17 periods, 8.5 times 2. Then we're just going to report NPER, else I'm going to report this. So if you have a bond that's going to mature, if the only bonds out there are going to mature before our due date, you're going to have to pick that bond. Forecast price, so we're going to make the assumption that the yield to maturity stays the same, but we're coming forward to are we're coming forward to, there's only 47 periods left. So in other words, this is the amount of time from 11/18/2014 until the bond matures. And we want to know what the present value of that bond is going to be. So we're just applying the present value equation. Notice that we're taking yield divided by 2. I4 is the number of periods left. C4 times D4 is the coupon rate times the face value. And then D4 is the future value of the bond, which is $1,000. Check my time here. The terminal value, all right, in this case, 8.5 years in the future, there's still a bunch of time left on this bond. So we want to know what the price of the bond is going to be 8.5 years in the future, making the assumption that yield to maturity doesn't change. So in this case, we want to take the number of periods left minus 8.5 years in the future. And that gives us the number of periods that are left 8.5 years in the future. Apply the basic bond equation again, future value is still 1,000. So if we wanted to sell the bond 8.5 years in the future, this is the price we predict it would sell at, $1,316.39. And it has to be lower than the last price if it's a premium bond, or higher than the last price if it's a discount bond. Our next thing we want to calculate is the future value of our interest payment. So what this means is we get an interest payment from the company, we turn around and buy a bond with it, this exact same bond. So that's why our yield to maturity stays the same. The payment that we're looking for, the number of periods, is 17 periods, 8.5 years in the future. 8.5 years in the future, we sell the bonds, and that becomes the value of the portfolio. And then our payment is going to be the coupon rate times the face value divided by 2. So the total contribution is just these two guys added together. 8.5 years in the future value of my interest payments reinvested in the bond plus the value of the bond that I bought originally is going to end up being $2,152. And the duration of the bond is the duration calculation. That's going to be the settlement date, which is the date we buy the bond, that's the 18th. And then the date of maturity, which is right here. And then the C4, which is the coupon rate, and then E4, which is the yield to maturity, comma 2 means it's a semi-annual bond. Alright, and you'll want to do that that's the way you're going to start selecting bonds. I'm not selecting this one because the trade date was so late. This one, these 5 bonds I am selecting. These 5 bonds I am selecting because the trade dates are relatively close to, the last trade date is relatively close to the settlement date, the day I'm going to pick it up, which means the yield to maturities are valid numbers. Okay? So this is the first process. You'll have 10 bonds. You have to select the bond. You might want to compare. You need 1 bond from each company. And if all the bonds that from that company mature early, you got to use that bond. Instead of moving it out 8.5 years, you're going to move it out until the maturity of the bond. So if this thing is coming due before 8.5 years, then you just invest in that. Part of the project for you to figure out. And these are our duration equations. Everything else you can just drag down. So that's the first step in terms of picking the bonds. And again, you need 10 bonds. Our NPER up here, just to take a look at it, is terminal date minus the beginning date times 2 divided by 365, so 8.5 years into the future. And that's what this calculation is just showing. All right, thank you very much. And our next step is forming the portfolio.